Hi there, friends. Welcome to the Stampin' Up studio. I am Mary Knabe, coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio. And it is Monday, July 11th, 10th, July 10th. Monday, July 10th, and I'm happy you're here. I've got what I think are some fabulous cards to show you today, and certainly carry a summer theme with these. A couple of things though before we get started. If you missed last week's Facebook Live, I featured the Tropical Leaf Bundle, the stamp set and punch, and I made 3 cards showing how you can take a very simple card like this one, and then stepping it up. Here I used an embossing folder after I did the first round of stamping, put an embossing folder in, and then on the last card I stepped it up even more by stamping a background and then popping up that sentiment to make it more of a focal point. Since I only did one Facebook Live last week, I went ahead and made another video featuring that very same stamp set, Tropical Leaf. And in that stamp set, or in that video, I used that stamp set to make my own designer series paper from a basic white sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. So I stamped all over it, and then I made 5 cards with it. So if you go on over to stampinpeace.com, you can see the replay of last week's Facebook Live. Plus there's another post showing how to make your own designer series paper with that wonderful tropical leaf stamp set, and how you're going to cut that 8.5 by 11 stamped cardstock to make 5 cards with it. So definitely check those out. And if you are looking for the Tropical Leaf stamp set and or punch, the bundle, it can be found in the online store under online exclusives. Couple other reminders. Today, July 10th, is the very last day to register for my Let's Go Fishing One Sheet Wonder class. These One Sheet Wonders, this is just the second in a series of 6 that I'm doing over the course of 6 months. And so far they've been super popular. So if you want to get in on that, all the information is on stampinpeace.com. You will get the One Sheet Wonder template, the 3 card sketches, and all of the directions to make 2 sets of cards, 3 each. So please check that out. And again, tonight is the deadline. All right. Also on stampinpeace.com, yesterday I announced my newest class to go, featuring the So Refreshing bundle. And this is another bundle that is perfect for making summer themed cards. This is the stamp set, and then it's got a wonderful die set to go with it. And this is just one of the cards that you'll make in that class. So registration for that just opened yesterday, and again, you can find it on stampinpeace.com. Now it's time for us to jump into making today's cards. The featured product or product of the week is Season of Chic. And I love the stamp set because you can use it throughout the year, and it's got different images for the different seasons that we have. So I'm going to flip my camera around now, and while I do that, would you please share this live video and invite others to join us for today's card making demonstration. Okay, we are going to have a lot of fun today creating 3 different cards. And as I said, we're using the Season of Chic stamp set. Now this does have a wonderful die set that goes with it. I am not using the dies today. That will be for another demonstration. But today I'm using just some of the stamps in the set. And anytime, like last week, when I made 3 cards, starting with a simple card and then moving on to a second card, stepping it up and adding more features to it, and then making a third card, stepped up even further, I've gotten great response, and I've had people saying they want to see more of that. So that's what I'm showing you today. 3 cards using basically the same supplies, but I will step up each card that I make. So we're going to start with a simple card. And the colors that I'm using are Lost Lagoon. I'm going to set up my ink pads first so they're ready. Lost Lagoon, Petal Pink, Pool Party, and Crumb Cake. And I'm going to try real hard not to get my hand in or arm in all these inks. I also need a piece of scrap paper because I want to do some stamping off. And I was going to show you, well, that's all right. I don't know what I do with it. I did my sample stamping a full strength ink, and then I made another sample stamping off first. I'm trying to get this camera just right, and I move it a tiny bit, and it's what it shows on the camera and on my computer screen are not the same. I don't know why. There's always a different border. So I was trying to get it just right for you, but maybe I should just leave it alone. So anyways, I decided that I liked this card with the stamping off technique a little bit better. Now I'm going to, and all of the stamps I use are from Season of Chic. I'm going to first start with this one. It kind of looks like a color swatch. And I'm going to start with my Petal Pink. I'm going to be stamping with this image 3 times in 3 different colors. And I'm going to start in the middle. I found that was the easiest way for me to get a good placement of each of the images. Then at the top, I'm going to stamp Lost Lagoon. And each time, you can't see, but each time I'm reaching over and cleaning my stamp with my Simply Chamois so that I'm not contaminating my ink pads or mixing the colors in the ink pads. Then I'm going to take this outline of the seashell and I'm going to stamp it in Crumb Cake. I'm going to stamp it 3 different times. And then we have this solid stamp to stamp the inside of my seashells. Now, before I stamp it, I want to show you. So this is stamping the details at full strength, and then this is stamping the inside of the shell at full strength. You can see it loses some detail. It's not bad, but I have decided that I'm going to stamp off with the inside and just make it a little lighter, really, because I want those colors underneath to kind of show through. But again, that's a matter of personal preference. So if you're making these cards, please try it both ways and see which way you prefer. Then I have this, I don't know what to call it. It's, I would say splatter, but it's got almost like a little twig shape in it. And I'm going to stamp with this, but I'm going to stamp off. So the only time I'm stamping at full strength is when I stamped the details of the shells. And the last thing I'm going to do is stamp the sentiment, thinking of you. I'm going to stamp that in this Lost Lagoon. As you can see, I've been stamping on top of my Stampin' Pierce mat to get that cushion since I'm using a photopolymer stamp set. Oh, Kathy, that is funny. Your little 4-year-old grand loves to listen to my live, so she'll be disappointed she's not here to watch this week. Oh, that is so funny because another customer, her little granddaughter, Corey, who in fact just had a birthday, same thing. She wanted to watch Knabe videos when she goes to her grandma's house. So I thought that was kind of cute. Okay, and I think I forgot to tell you the dimensions. I just want to double check it. So the dimensions of the basic white are 4.5 by 3 1/4. 4.5 by 3 1/4. I put that on top of Lost Lagoon, which is 4 5/8 by 3 3/8. And then I'm putting that on top of Petal Pink, which measures, it should be 5 1/8, I believe. No, 4 7/8 by 3 5/8. 4 7/8 by 3 5/8. And then I'm simply going to fold my Pool Party card base in half, put this right on the front, right in the center there, add my basic white to the inside, and then I have a simple stamping card made. Oops, why did I get some ink on there? Shoot. I'll have to redo that or put something there to hide it. But that is it. That's my simple stamping card. Stamps, ink, and paper. Now we're going to make another card very similar, but we're going to step it up, okay? So my second card, we're going to do a couple of different things. It will start out, we'll start out making the card the same way, but we're going to change up the sentiment, and we're also going to add some gold accent to it. Again, I'm just stamping off with each of the colors, Lost Lagoon, Petal Pink, and Pool Party. Next, I'm going to stamp my shells. Crumb Cake Full Strength ink for the details of the shells. And for the inside, to fill in that shell, I'm stamping off. I just want a very light shade of Crumb Cake. Again, because I want some of that original color to show through. And lastly, you know, maybe this is sand or little pebbles, shells, something like that. But I'm going to stamp off with these. I think I'll do a little in the corner here too, maybe. Okay. So let's put the rest of this, the layers together, and then I'll show you the changes or additions we're making to step up the original card. Notice I did not stamp the sentiment in the corner like I did on my first card. That's one of the changes you'll see on this one. All my layers are using the same colors as well, same dimensions. Now, before I add this to the front of my card, before I add the layers to the front, I do want to, and where did it go? I have no idea. Oh, here it is. It was stuck to the back of the sample. I have this gold specialty paper. It's actually called, let me see here, Distressed Gold Specialty Paper. It comes in 12 by 12 sheets. I know for a while it was on unavailable to order. I'm not sure if it's back yet or not, but if it is, or when it does come back, I hope you will grab some. I love it to just mainly add accents, pretty gold accents to the cards, but it's not, it's got a lot of texture dimension to it. So it's got some parts that are shiny, some that are dull. It's just really, really fun. So that's one change, adding that distressed gold specialty paper. And that strip was, let's see, it's 5.5 by 1 1/4 inches, I believe. 1 1/4, yes. Now, I said I was going to do something different with the sentiment. I have this 3/4 inch strip of petal pink cardstock. I did not cut the length of it, and I'll tell you why. Right here, it's so small. If you cut that length to begin with, it's really hard to put it in here and hold on to it and punch it. So what I like to do in a case like that is cut the width, 3/4 inch. I punch the end, and now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. Again, I'm using Thinking of You. Before I stamped in Lost Lagoon, I decided that I didn't love the Lost Lagoon ink on top of the petal pink cardstock, but I didn't want to change my petal pink cardstock. I like that because it brings that out a little bit more. So I decided I would stamp. I also tried the other colors, and I decided that I really liked the sentiment stamped in crumb cake on petal pink the best. So that's what I've done. Then you can either, and you don't even have to know the length really, just, you know, cut it to where it looks right. You can even cut it with your paper snips if you don't want to get your big cutter out. But you'll probably have it out anyways because you're probably crafting and making cards as much as I am. And now I'm just going to pop this up with 2 dimensionals. So I've used all the same products with the exception of adding that distressed gold specialty paper. And there's my stepped up card. So I went from this to this. Okay. Now we're going to do something even more exciting. Oops, I forgot to put the center in, the middle. This inside, what am I saying? Center, middle. It's the inside. Basic white for the inside of the card. I like to do that right away, otherwise I forget. So now I'm going to do another card that I step up even more. So there's some more fun surprises in the next card. I'm going to pretty much make this layer the same with one exception. And you're gonna love this when you see it. So petal pink, Lost Lagoon, and Pool Party stamped off once again. Now before, I was stamping the outline of the shells first. This time I'm doing something a little bit different, and you'll understand in a moment. I'm going to stamp the inside of the shells first, and I am stamping off again with the crumb cake. Again, just stamping the inside of the shells like that. And then, let me pull it out here. I'm going to pull out my Versamark ink. I need my heat tool. And I've got my Embossing Editions toolkit. I think that's what it's called, Embossing Editions toolkit. And I need, where did it go? I'm looking for my gold powder, and I don't know what happened to it. Come on. Okay, this is silly because I just used it this afternoon. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I knew it was right within my reach. So, and I'm going to close these up, and I'll tell you why. This embossing powder, as careful as you are with it, it's still easy for it to spread to places you don't want it. So I'm going to go ahead and close up my ink pads so that I don't get any of that embossing powder in here. And we're finished with most of those actually, so that's fine. So with that Embossing Editions toolkit, you get all of this. I'm first using the embossing buddy, and I want to go over my cardstock really, really well. That takes the static away from your cardstock so that when you add embossing powder, it only sticks to where you have your ink and not, it doesn't stick in places you don't want it. So now let me clean off the outline or the detailed shell image. And I'm going to, that ink pad's looking a little yucky, but it still works. And I'm going to stamp the detail right over that solid part of the shells. And I've already had my gold embossing powder in this container, but if I didn't, or for other colors, I actually work with my embossing powder right over this tray that comes with your Embossing Editions toolkit. Now you can see I got a little something right there, and I'm just going to use my brush to move that away. I probably touched it with a fingernail or something. And I do like to kind of flick it like that. I'm going to cover up my embossing powder and move it out of the way, because that's another thing you don't want to do. You don't want to have that embossing powder open. If you're using a ceiling fan or any kind of fan near your workspace, make sure you turn off that fan. The other thing is your heat tool blows air, and you don't want it blowing around your powder when it's open like that. When you use the Versamark ink, the ink appears clear when you stamp it. But as soon as you put the powder on it, you'll see exactly where you stamped. And then we just move our heat tool around to melt all of that embossing powder. And you'll be able to see really clearly when it's melted, because it gets shiny and glossy. It may look wet to you. It's not really, it dries real fast. But that's how you know. Okay, I'm gonna stop here for just a moment. So you can see the areas that are shiny and glossy. You can see it's not right there, is it? That means when it's dull like that and I can actually see the powder, that means I missed that spot. So I need to go back in with my heat tool. Okay, looks like I got it all. Now, some of you, especially if you are heat embossing on even larger pieces, or you have maybe a narrow piece with a sentiment, you might see that your paper curls somewhat. If it curls too much, what you can do is take your heat tool, turn it on, and heat from the opposite side, and it will kind of straighten that out a little bit. Typically, you're not going to see a whole lot of curving or bending, curling of your paper. All right, I'm going to get all this out of the way. And then we'll complete our card. One thing I didn't do that I realized I forgot when I was using the heat tool is I didn't put our little pebbles on, but that's okay. I can still add them. Kind of going all around the card here. Okay. So now we're ready to put together the rest of the card. And again, you'll see a couple of changes. Now, obviously here, the heat embossing with that gold powder is the big change for this third card. Again, all of the layers are the same dimensions for this card as the other two cards. You know, one thing too, I'll say, if you're, I didn't do it here, but you can, if your paper has curled with the heat embossing, just give it a little more adhesive, and that will help it lie flat. You may even like it with a little curl showing, shows a little more dimension. But if you want it completely flat, just put more adhesive on the edges, okay? Then I'm going to add these two layers to my petal pink layer. I've got that Distress Gold specialty paper again, 5.5 inches by 1 1/4 inches. And I'm putting it right up to the fold of my card front. Add my layers. And I've got 2 more things to do with you here for this card. Again, I'm going to stamp my sentiment on petal pink. I've got a 3/4 inch strip, punching just one end with the Banner's Pick-a-Punch. Then I'm going to stamp Thinking of You with Crumb Cake ink. I like the way the crumb cake shows up against the petal pink. And I also like using crumb cake, no matter what colors you use for your beachy theme cards. Crumb cake always seems to work in terms of sand and shells and the sprays of grasses and things like that that you can see at the beach. I'm just going to trim this. Again, I'm just eyeballing it, looking to make sure that that the sentiment looks fairly centered in that banner. But again, those small pieces are just really hard to handle, putting in that pick-a-punch, getting it in there straight, having enough to pull it out. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to bring in my little, why do I always forget the name of this? Somebody help me out here. Silicone craft sheet. Silicone craft sheet. I have this strip of distressed gold specialty paper. It's a 1/4 inch, or about a 1/4 inch. I have to be honest and say that any of the gold, distressed gold specialty paper you see is all scraps I had in my pack. All scraps. And remember, sometimes those specialty papers we look at and think, ooh, that's a little expensive. But keep in mind, you don't use those specialty papers as much as you do your cardstock, because you're typically using paper like this for accents on your cards, your scrapbook pages, your other paper crafts, maybe home decor. We're typically using smaller pieces that accent what we're doing. It's not often we use large pieces. Like we might occasionally for a background, right? Maybe a 5 1/4 by 4 inch background. You could use it that way, but I find with things like this, I'm typically using the specialty papers as accents. And then I'm just going to pop this up. On dimensionals, right about there. Okay, so far we have 2 changes. We've got the gold embossed shells, and then I've added this piece of distressed gold paper underneath the sentiment. And after I put this basic white on the inside of my card, I have just one more thing to add to my card front. And think of the name of the stamp sets, Season of Chic. Think of shabby chic. What does it mean to you when something is kind of chic? It's a lot of layers, maybe some things out of the, the usual for you, lots of bits and pieces and textures, that sort of thing, right? Lots of mixing and matching. So as you can see, with all of the things I've used, especially on this last card, I've even created along that idea of making something chic. Now, I don't think I'm typically one to make things that look shabby chic. I do occasionally, but sometimes the stamps or the paper or whatever lend themselves to that. And I'm just looked up, and Jan, that is a good tip. If you are using a large piece of specialty paper, like if we were to cut, and I did consider covering the whole front with that specialty paper, which would be 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. And a lot of you would say to me, don't do that because you waste all that gets covered up. Gianna's saying you can take dies or punches or even your paper trimmer and cut out the inside of that large piece of specialty paper. Put it down for your background, your border, whatever you want to call it, and then put your layers on top so you're not wasting much. Very good tip, Gian. So I've just doubled a length of linen thread, and I do want this bow kind of big and long. I wanted the extra layers of it, so that's why I doubled up the length. I like that it's even a little bit curly, wavy from being on the spool. And then the last thing I'm going to do is put it on my card front. And there are lots of, at first I typically will do a bow and I'll put it down there. It could be anywhere, and I decided I'm putting it up here in the corner. If I did a smaller bow, maybe I would put it down here by the banner. All right, so, and I think most of you know my tip. When you can either use mini glue dots, one behind the knot of the bow to adhere it, or put a drop of glue, put your bow in place, and just set a clear stamping block on top of that, and it will hold that in place where you want it and give that dot of glue a little time to dry. Okay. We should stamp the envelopes, right? I'm just going to do this kind of fast. And for this, I will use, where's my scrap paper? I'm going to use some different colors. We're going to stamp each of the envelopes just a tad bit differently. I'm going to stamp, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to stamp off with Lost Lagoon. Using that solid image, shell image, and then I'm going to go over it with the crumb cake. And I'm going to do the same thing, but switch out the Lost Lagoon for the petal pink, and then finally the pool party. And remember, you do want to clean off your stamp before you switch colors. That just keeps your ink pads clean, in good condition. They'll last longer because you're not cross-contaminating the different colors of ink. And then the last one would be pool party. And there are my 3 stamped envelopes. Quick and easy, right? But just adds a fun, creative, custom touch to your envelopes. And when somebody gets an envelope that has a little bit of stamping or decoration on it, they know they're about to open something wonderful, right? It kind of gives people a sneak peek of what they're going to find inside the envelope. So that's always fun. All right, let me pull these 3 cards back in here so you can see the progression. I started doing a simple stamping card, and whoever I send cards to, whoever names are drawn, I'll send you the sample of this one because I had obviously had red ink from my earlier project today. I was using real red that got on my Stampin' Pierce mat, and I need to clean that off. So I'm not going to send you that one with the smudge. Actually, let's just put it here so I don't forget. So you can see the progression, right? We went from simple stamping. We made a change by adding this strip of distressed gold specialty paper, and by changing the color of the sentiment and putting it on petal pink cardstock banner and popping it up. And then for the 3rd card, we added a few more steps. We added the gold heat embossing for the detail of the shells. Doesn't show up as well laying flat, but I think you can see it, right? There you go. You can see some shine now. So the gold embossed shells. We again have that strip, plus we added some more of the gold distressed gold specialty paper to the bottom of our banner, and then we added a double linen bow. So went from simple stamping to little stepped up to stepped up and chic, right? Okay, who learned something new today? Did anybody pick up a new tip, or were you reminded of something that you hadn't thought about for a long time? If so, would you just type it in the comments? That will serve as a little bit of an overview of some of the different things we covered, okay? If you are interested in receiving, having your name put into the drawing to possibly receive one of these 3 color cards, please type in the comments now, Season of Chic. Season of Chic. You know, Becky, that's interesting that you say you often forget to stamp the envelopes. If you've been watching me for a while, I don't stamp envelopes a lot. And I have to say that when I did in-person classes, I always had out extra stamps and that they could, or showed them how they could use the stamps to decorate their envelopes. I always made sure they had that choice. And somewhere along the line, I just got out of the habit of doing it. So I've been trying to think, what is with my camera here? So I've been trying to be real conscious of that and try to add a bit of fun and interest to the envelope. So yes, and of course you can stamp here in the corner, you can stamp along the left edge, you can stamp the flap, all kinds of fun things. And actually, if you watch the Facebook Live from last week with the tropical leaf demonstration where we started, same thing. We started with a simple stamping card and did a progression of stepped up cards. You will see there some different examples of stamping envelopes. All right, and Lori says you don't emboss often. That's another thing. Sometimes I think with heat embossing that I have to, like, I guess what I'm saying is in the past when I've done heat embossing, it was, oh, I'm going to stamp this pretty Merry Christmas sentiment. I love the font. It would be so cool to stamp it in gold embossing or silver. And I work around that. And lately I've been trying to work on a card and then think about how can I add a little heat embossing to this? Or how can I add a layer that's embossed with an embossing folder? So I've been trying to kind of change my thinking about it a little bit. I'm always looking for new ways to get a little bit more creative, right? Because you know, the more we create, the more creative we become. And part of extending our creativity is just playing with layouts, playing with colors, playing with techniques. I'm sure you guys get that. And Jan says she will stamp the inside of her cards. That's a good idea too. That's a good idea too. Jen, yes, if you have very old embossing powder, it should still work. It should still work. It should, unless it's clumpy or something like that. But honestly, I have, let me show you, like, I have these. Both of these are old labels. We don't label like this anymore. And these still work. Just make sure they're in their airtight container. I have them in the original containers. I can't tell you how many years old these are. I believe we had the blue labels. Let me think about this. The blue labels and then the green? I'm not even sure. But yes, they are many, many years old. Okay. Shanda says she also loves stamping on the inside of cards. I tend to write a lot, so I don't often stamp much in a card. But certainly it's a fun thing to do. It's not that I never do it. It's just a lot of times if I'm making a card for somebody in particular, I have a reason for sending that cards and I want to, I don't know, I'm just wordy. As you can see, because I'm rambling on right now, right? Yes, Shanda, using designer series paper on the flap of your envelope is another great way. Jen, yes, your old embossing tool, your old heat embossing tool should still work. I had mine up until not too long ago. I sold it to somebody at a reduced rate. The difference, if I remember correctly, the difference between the old and the new, the other one was black, I remember. I think it was a little bulkier. I think it only had one speed too, if I remember. This has 2 speeds, but typically I go all the way up to 2. The other one could get just a little bit hotter than was necessary. But really, it should work just fine. It should work just fine. Okay, yes, Jen, get back to your heat embossing. And when you do that, show us an example. Take a picture of your card and post it here. I'd love to see it, and I'm sure others would as well. All right, everybody, just to let you know, I will not be doing a live on Thursday. I am driving to Canada on Thursday to stay with my friend Anne Granger. And then she, along with 2 other Canadian demonstrators, are hosting a demonstrator training event for their teams. And they asked me to be a guest speaker for them. So I will be talking about how I do my classes to go and presenting that to other Stampin' Up! Demonstrators who work and live in Canada. So that'll be fun. I'll be gone Thursday through Monday. I'm hoping to post a video of another project using this Season of Chic bundle, stamp set or bundle. Remember, it has the dies that go with it. So hopefully I'll have that ready and can have it posted for you on Thursday. I don't know what time I will be back on Monday, so I may not be live next Monday either. I'm stopping in Toledo on the way back to have lunch with another demonstrator friend, Julie Heights. Some of you might know her. She's the, what's her business called? Chirpy Quilt and Cards, or card maker and quilting, something like that, but chirpy, like a bird chirps, because she's also a bird watcher. But I'm stopping to see her in Toledo, and we're going to have lunch together before I come back. So should be fun. I will miss you all, but I'm sure I will come back with some great ideas because they are doing a swap. And I decided that I'm going to participate in the swap. So I was making those today with that real red ink. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Happy stamping. Please, when you are creating, I would love for you to share what you're making right here on Stampin' Piece with Mary Knabe. And if you like the projects that you see here, be sure to go on over to stampinpiece.com. That's my website and blog where I have all of my past videos with blog posts, color photos, dimensions, all that good stuff. All right, take care. Happy Monday.